If you wanted to disappear and hide from the world, this vast city is perfect.
Welcome back, I'm Raiden from Blue Gaming, and this week on Raiden Reviews, I'm taking a look at Hitman 2, a game that I probably should have reviewed in 2018. It's taken me long enough to review it, so let's just get right into it, starting as always with graphics. This section actually started out quite bad for me. See, when I first started playing, the shadows in the game were actually in this checkerboard pattern that was flickering so fast that it was causing my eyes to hurt. And I don't even have epilepsy or anything like that. Thankfully, though, it turns out that this problem was just a NVIDIA driver problem, and updating my graphics card drivers quickly solved this problem. After that, the game ran amazingly, staying at 60 FPS on ultra settings even when the screen was full of people. And the only time that I've seen it drop from that is occasionally when the game is saving, it'll drop down to 30 to 40 frames a second, but that only lasts for a couple of seconds while the game is saving. Next, let's move on to sound, music, and voice. Typically in the sound section of my reviews, I pick out a couple sound effects from the game that are just stand out for either being really good or really bad. But this time, it's going to be one combination of sound effects. It's the ambient sounds in the game. These might be the best ambient sounds that I've heard in a game ever. They make the world just feel so alive, even though you can only traverse through somewhat of a small part of it. It just makes these levels feel huge and expansive and like they're actually part of the real world. I don't even have that many words to describe it. All I can say is that it feels natural, like it's supposed to be there. And I think that the game would feel drastically different if these ambient sounds weren't there. So it's a really good thing and just a standout feature that a lot of games don't do as well as it's done here. Next, let's move on to music, which I don't really have much to say about. The music in the game is quite forgettable and somewhat generic feeling, although if you're more into Hitman, I feel like this music is more par for the course. But as someone that plays quite a few games, this isn't really any sort of memorable soundtrack that you're going to find here. Next, let's move on to voice, which happens more often and less often than you would think. Agent 47 and his handler barely ever talk. The handler talks a lot more than Agent 47, though. You'll hear her every time a mission starts and after every important kill. But the majority of what you'll be hearing is just random citizens around the place. And this just goes back to what I was talking about earlier with the worlds feeling alive and natural, because it'd be quite awkward if the game had these huge crowds and nobody was talking. And I have to give special props for the way that the voices are mixed in with the ambient sounds. You can actually hear people try to speak up and speak louder if you're in a loud environment versus if you're in some of the quiet environment. The people don't need to speak as loud, and so they actually just don't. Something else that's incredible is that I haven't heard many, if any, reused voice lines in my time playing, and I've played through the same mission several times, and it still seems as if the people are saying new voice lines every time. I just don't have anything bad to say about the voice acting in the game or how it's used, so let's move on to story. Which, surprisingly, you can completely skip past the story in this game. You can even skip right over cutscenes where they don't even start playing. But basically, the story in this game is that in the first Hitman that came out a couple years ago, all of the hits that you did in that were from a single shadow client that was trying to take out a group called Providence, which is basically this game's version of the Illuminati. And then in this game, Providence comes to you to try to track down the shadow client and all the people working with him, and so basically that's who you go after in this game. It's a really shallow-ish plot, like there's a lot that you can go into, but it just ties together the different hits in this game. And personally, I didn't pay attention to it that much. I don't think that most people are going to, especially when you're going through the same missions over and over and over again, which I will talk about in gameplay. If you haven't played a Hitman game, there's really no other game like it. Basically, what you do is you start out before a mission and you choose what loadout you're going to go in with. Basically, what kind of gadgets you're going to have, what your weapon's going to be, what kind of outfit you're going to start out wearing. Other things like if an item is going to be stored somewhere in a drop site on the map so that you can go pick it up at some point, and even where you're going to spawn in on the map. Once you're there, you then have to eliminate some set amount of targets. It could be just one, it could be two, or even three targets. And then from there, you then proceed to kill all three targets in whatever manner you deem necessary. Now, if that was the entirety of the game, then it would be quite boring, but the massive replayability in the game comes from the challenges that you can do for each mission. And these challenges can change things up drastically, such as having to get through an entire mission without alerting anybody, or even killing the target in a specific manner. I remember specifically on the second mission, there's a challenge to kill one of the two targets with a fish. There are other weird challenges like that on every single map, and it's really those challenges which is why people come back over and over and over again. And honestly, if you aren't going for those challenges and you don't care about those challenges, there's really no point to play this game, because you can finish it in about 5 to 6 hours, and if you don't want to replay any of the missions over again, then you're really just going to be done at that point. But if you do want to do those missions, then there is a ton of replay value in this game, and it will last you quite a long time. Personally, I feel like I'm finished with a mission when I complete the Silent Assassin Suit Only challenge, which requires you to not wear any disguises, just the starting suit, and not raise any alarms while killing all the targets. And I just realized I keep mentioning these missions, but I haven't talked about them yet. In Hitman 2, there are 6 missions that you can go through. These are all about the same difficulty, although I found that parts of them are easier or harder than others. And they range anywhere from being at a racetrack to being in the middle of Mumbai. You even get to go into just the suburbs of Vermont for one mission, and there's a huge variety in each of these. And the maps and missions themselves aren't that expansive. Like, they're actually quite big, but they aren't huge open worlds. They're just like medium-sized sandboxes. And there's quite a few ways to go throughout each mission. And as a side note, if you play Hitman 2016 on Steam and you get Hitman 2 on Steam, you can actually play Hitman 2016 inside of Hitman 2. I don't know if that works the same way for consoles, but I know that that definitely works for Steam. If you didn't play Hitman 2016, then you can actually just pay $20 or your regional equivalent, and you can unlock the entirety of Hitman 2016 in Hitman 2 to actually double the amount of missions in Hitman 2. Now let's move on to the score. I know that this review is quite a bit shorter than most of my other ones, but this game came out a while ago, and you've probably seen other videos on Hitman 2 already. If you don't happen to know, my scoring structure goes buy it, wait for a sale, or never touch it. And for Hitman 2, I have to give this game a buy, but only if you're going for the challenges. If you don't plan on going back and completing a lot of the harder to get challenges, then there's really not that much content here for you, as the game is based around its replay value, since there is only 6 missions. If you're still wary about the game, or you've never played a Hitman game before, then I recommend that you wait for a sale. Hitman 2, even though it did release just a little bit ago, has already gone on sale, so it probably will again. I just wish that I would have reviewed or even played Hitman 2 last year, because I can guarantee you this game would have made it on my top 10 games of the year list. This game is just that good. The only problem is there's not a whole ton of people that are going to play this game over and over and over again like it really wants you to. But hey, at least IO Interactive didn't get completely destroyed when they split from Square Enix. As always, I'm Raiden from Blue Gaming, and I'll see you guys in the next one.